Hello. Let's discuss awakening the sense gates. So, when we are beginning our practice, we find very often we receive instructions that are very difficult to carry out. And a big part of this is that we are unable to perceive the object of the instructions. And this cultivation of perception is one of the big tools that allows us for rapid growth on the spiritual path. Why is it rapid? Because we can actually feel what it is that we're working with. We can perceive it. It's very difficult to work with something that you cannot perceive. If you are working with something that you are unable to perceive, then it requires typically faith in an exercise or in a teacher of sorts, that whatever you're doing, that exercise will bring about the sought after results. However, when one can feel, can perceive through any of the sense gates, and as those open up into the spirit senses, as one can perceive through these, then we can begin to aim our training in particular ways. So this begins with developing the physical senses, right? If you're doing mental training, you may have done cognitive training where you're training visualization capacities, whether that's eye capacities, visual capacities, or auditory, olfactory, etc., where you are in the imagination creating from the inside, eventually out, these particular patterns of sensory stimulus and sensory expression. What happens on the other side of that is quite interesting, because you're building pathways of expression for information. Now that's the creative approach. We also have the more yin approach, which would be something to the effect of exploring the physical senses from the external environment. So this would be if you want to train your ear gate to listen. If you want to train your eye gate, practice seeing. If you want to train your sense of touch, train your sense of touch. And there's, a million different exercises and ways of exploring this for the physical senses. Now, when we want to begin actually progressing beyond the physical sense gates, then we need to start working with energy directly. And it is very difficult to start working with energy directly if you cannot feel it. And that is where we often get locked in to doing particular physical exercises in the hopes that one day we're able to have enough quantity of, say, accumulated life force and vital energy, or moving into more of an astral fluidic substance, that we can feel it, that we can perceive it. So we're relying on quantitative development and accumulation over time. Now, the other way to do this is to develop the perception itself, so that you can feel the energy that you're working with, and then alter your training as needed to maximize that energy. So through perception, and then through qualitative cultivation in relation to the perception, then we can facilitate a much faster growth rate. So let's say you start working with vital energy, then you build a relationship with that energy. If you do a lot of that training, let's say you do that all day, every day for, it doesn't take long, a couple of weeks or whatever, then you have enough built up critical mass with that energy, as in the patterns of awareness are tuned to that energy, subconsciously. And if you're engaging in the various exercises that might help strengthen this and that might help open up flexibility of the mind within this substrate of energy, then you start to notice that you are viewing through this vital force. You are viewing through this life force. You're listening, and there's a relationship to the life force that's tuned through the listening gate. You start touching food, tasting food, smelling food. Whatever, you're outside, you're smelling the trees, and you start to smell life force to be able to feel the life force in more mundane situations. In order to get to that, we need to build up the quantity of the life force. We also want to build up the perceptions of the life force, and then we want to work on the quality. And the quality is something that's very often disregarded because the focus is on this energy that's so far so different than what we might normally be used to tapping into and to perceiving. So we have our sensitivity to the energy, our awareness of it, we have the quantity of it, right? And these help each other. The more quantity, the easier it is to perceive. The more perception capability, the easier it is to build the quantity, because you can feel directly what you're doing, what is working, what's not working. The quality, like I said, is something that is often left out of the picture. And so this is where we need to begin looking at the relationship we have to that life force in general. What is it that's happening in us, and what environments are we in? So what is the internal environment and condition? What is the external environment and condition? So to begin with, if you want to have a higher quality internal life force as it comes out of you, then we need to, of course, look at healthy physical environments, so quality and pure air, quality and pure food, water, etc. And we also need to begin looking at the soul mirror work and the psychological and emotional quality that we are expressing with and perceiving with through the being, because the more of this energy that accumulates, the more it will pressurize whatever is present, whether positive or negative. And as we all know, if you are thinking and feeling negative, depleting thoughts, you can build up tremendous amounts of life force, and now you just have more fuel in a negative tank. Also, the negative habits of mind and of emotion are very, very depleting. These consume a lot of energy. Things like gossiping and talking shit, and all this stuff where you are using the energy to support the rationalizing mind as it finds its way, this kind of demon of the logical mind, as it finds its way into creating perceptions to situation that pedestalize its own correctness. So there's many different ways in which we lose that energy, and poor quality habits of mind and of emotion are really, really, really quick ways to just drain that energy. So if we're going to build a bunch of energy, we want it to fill, essentially, the positive attributes. So what are positive qualities that we want to cultivate? And then we can contemplate these and then release these contemplations within the life force, within the field of life force that we're creating. So you can look at the word contemplate in a couple of ways. One would be if you're using like the con prefix or with and a template. So you have a template. With that template, you release that template into the life force, right? Maybe it is for vitality, resiliency, vibrancy, etc., etc., whatever qualities that you might want to work with in the beginning: harmony, health, rejuvenation, revitalization, on and on. And you start to really tune into these qualities as they are inflated and infused with the life force. This is, of course, in the beginning. All this changes as time goes on. But looking at the qualitative development can be very helpful, because now we're accumulating this energy, we're accumulating this perception, and we are accumulating qualitative development. And this can really take us quite far. So, I hope you found this helpful. And when you're exploring these energetic methods that are out there, that you can really start to look at what it is you are actually doing. What is it that you're practicing? Okay, often we forget or don't consider what it is we are actually practicing because we think that the exercise is what we are practicing. But how we are engaging to all aspects of that exercise, to ourselves in relation to the exercise, to the environment in relation to the exercise, to ourselves, etc., 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 this is what we are practicing. So if you are practicing, say, building a bunch of life force and localizing it in the lower dantian, for example, let's say you're doing more Taoist type arts, well, how is it that that energy is getting there, right? What is it that you're doing? Do you hate that practice? Is it something that you are doing in a bunch of contrast to yourself? Are you practicing being in contrast to what you're doing? Are you practicing fighting yourself? Are you practicing internal loaths, just a loathsome expression to your own self and actions as you're doing that exercise? And these are things that we want to look at, because in the beginning it takes a fair bit of will to start practicing. And if we can find a way to navigate the practice that is positive from as many different standpoints as possible, this will really, really, really open a lot of doors and help to alleviate a lot of the negative effects that can arise through energetic practice, especially. All right, so that's everything for this one. If you're interested in training, please check out the website, and there is a retreat coming up June 2026, Initiation into Hermetics and Invo and Evocation. That's the Deity yogas and integration trainings and all kinds of ways of building and playing and exploring that energy over the course of the month. All right, see you there. Bye.